Hey everyone, welcome to the second edition of BB and Budgie's Thursday Night Recce for 2026 as we continue to count down to our very first events on the calendar, the Central Machine Hire Otago Rally, just over a week away now. BB, thanks for your time. Unfortunately, the big talking point, I guess, over the last few days has been the very sad passing of the late, great Morrie Chandler, a man who had an immense impact on the sport. And, I think we'd be here for a very long time if we're going to sit through all his achievements and the things that he's managed to do for rallying and for motorsport in general, yeah?
Absolutely, yeah. You could fill multiple podcasts with what Morrie's contributed to the sport, let alone what he's achieved as a competitor, and the stories that can be told by his many friends within the sport, because he was a very, very well loved and respected part of our community. And I think it's fair to say that rallying in this country would not be what it is without Morrie Chandler. Those days we all grew up with the WRC coming here pretty well every year. Well, that's entirely down to Morrie and his dream and vision and the work he continued to put in. And I really think that the efforts that he's put into our sport will struggle to be replicated ever. Huge heartfelt condolences to Morrie's family. Obviously, we see a fair bit of his couple of his grandkids, Amy and Josh, who compete fairly regularly, and we'd see Morrie around the service park as the world's proudest grandfather after all the roles he's held. So massive condolences to them and Vale Morrie. Thank you for everything you've done for all of us to allow us to love the sport that we love.
Yeah, very understated New Zealand sports custodian. You think of the impact that he's had on the sport worldwide. The roles that he's had, FIA, and kind of understated character. Just was happy to go back, getting on with his business, getting the job done, and didn't really want a whole lot of fanfare around his involvement. But you're right, mate. Someone who's going to have a lasting legacy throughout the generations to come. Let's have a look at some of the talking points in terms of the actual sport itself, because the last couple of weekends we've seen some rally sprints at both ends of the country, and some real talking points to come out of it. I think there are 14 NZRC teams at the Popotunua, 12, sorry, get that right, 14 NZRC teams across the last couple of rounds at Popotunua, Westland, and the Possum Bourne Memorial Rally. Some teething issues for some of our competitors. Talk us through some of those challenges that you've been aware of, mate.
Yeah. So 14 of them down at Popotunua. We'll get on to probably a fairly high-profile one a little bit later into this. But we saw Ari Pettigrew out with his first competitive run in the Porsche. Unfortunately, suffering from an alternator failure there. But this is why you go and do those shakedown runs and get them out of the way, because far better there than at Otago next week. Mark Parsons at the Possum Bourne Rally had a clutch fail on the first stage. Thankfully, he was able to get back out and do Westland with a pretty average second-rate co-driver alongside, to be fair, but did make the finish. So that was a nice little one to tick off and have a quite tasty little beverage at the end of that. Unfortunately, Willie Hawes didn't survive the Westland Rally. Had a cam belt issue after stage one. So again, that's a good thing to get out of the way before the championship starts. But there was some positive news too. A first rally win for Dylan Thompson alongside car owner Richard Fairhall in that ex-Ben Hunt car. So Dylan's first run. James McIver, very, very impressive over there too, to be second outright, and Dean Buist on the podium, not in his classic spec Escort, but that guy's a bit of a machine. So those guys did really, really well. A battle of the Jacks down at the Popotunua Rally Sprint 2. So Jack Hawkswood just edging out Jack Stokes. That was all very, very, very interesting. There was a lot of people looking at that pretty closely. Derek Aiken had a class win there too. So Yeah, a lot of people, I guess, starting to see a bit of a form guide out of those couple of events. But the big talking point, Dale Budge, and you sort of exchanged some messages. Robbie Stokes, unfortunately, throwing his pre-season prep into a bit of disarray.
Yeah, really frustrating for Robbie, isn't it? When you think of where he's come over the last couple of years, we haven't seen too many mistakes from him. He's been pretty consistent. The speed's been exceptional over the last couple of years, and I think he sort of goes into this championship as everyone's favourite, probably the guy that's most likely to win. Yes, there are some guys that'll certainly give him a run for his money, but he was the guy that people were talking about, and now he's going to spend those next 10 days or so leading into the event in a race against time to get that car fixed up. Really unfortunate. Just sort of hope that there's no lasting impact, BB. Like, as I said, Robbie had some issues early in his career. He was quick, but he made the odd mistake. We've seen a real consistency come into his driving. The last couple of years, I can't really remember any significant mistakes at his end. And we saw a really, really consistent performance from both he and the car through the championship last year. And you have a crash like this, you're obviously racing to get the car ready. That's where mistakes can happen with the car set up, and they can lead to more issues. And then just obviously with Robbie's driving as well, I hope that it doesn't dent the confidence or anything. Like he's turned himself into one of the absolute front runners in this championship, and fingers crossed that we don't see it sort of set him back anything. Yeah.
Well, that's exactly it. There's two things that the team have to ensure, and both of these are a lot easier said than done, especially when you got 10 days to turn a car around and Easter in the middle of it. The first one is you got to go through every nook and cranny of that car. You got to pull the thing apart because you don't know what might have been damaged in there. You're talking differentials, all that sort of stuff, pulling them apart on the bench, as well as the obvious cosmetic damage. We're not quite sure exactly how bad the car is, but obviously anything at this late stage is bad enough. So, I mean, they're fortunate in that worst case they've got the AP4 Fiesta there as a backup option. But certainly, it'll be a busy Easter weekend. Probably not so many Easter eggs consumed around the Stokes Motorsport stable. And the other one is Robbie's got to put it out of his head, and he's got to put it behind him, and he's got to turn up to stage 1 at Otago and just pretend like nothing's happened, which, again, is a whole heap easier said than done, Budgie. I'm no psychologist, but, that's a tricky thing to put behind you. So we really hope that that's the case because, seeing Dylan Thompson get up to speed with his car, we saw Quentin Palmer at the Possum Bourne Rally, second to Jack Hawkes. There's really 5 guys that are right in that fight, and then a few others that, how many times do we get to Otago and we see a surprise?
Yeah, I did exchange a couple of messages as you alluded to. I mean, they're obviously concerned. Like there's no guarantee that they're going to have the car fixed. They're hoping that the car will be ready in time. And but yeah, you mentioned they've got the backup, the AP4 Fiesta that Jack Stokes drove last year, sitting there in the shed, and we've seen him be very quick in that car. So all is not lost, even if there is a little bit of disruption to the lead up to the event. Hopefully the car's good and he's good to roll for stage 1. But if worst case scenario, we'll see him in the AP4 car. BB, this podcast was supposed to be about spectating. That was the idea, but so many talking points. We figured we better cover off some of those things before we actually got into it. But spectating. This is one of the best rallies in the country in terms of spectating. Some iconic stages. Let's go through some of the spots, mate. So you probably know these roads better than I do. There's a couple that jump out at me, and we'll get to that in due course. But special stage 4 on that opening day, junction of 4 Mile Creek and Tuapeka Flat Road. That one getting underway at just after 10 a.m. Tell us a little bit about that spot.
It's a fantastic spot, and like I've grown up watching. It's for me, the journey of through the NZRC. It's really neat when you turn up to a spot and you go, oh, geez, I watched this when I was like 7, which is quite a number of years ago now.
It was black and white TV in those days, yeah.
Yeah, it was. I'd like to point out that Dave Hedge was still making the TV then as well. So, if it ages me, it ages him, right? And this is definitely one of those spots. Comes across the valley floor, a couple of nice sweeping corners, and then into an acute junction.
Uphill to the end. Hawkswood blasted through the corkscrew road stage, beating his rivals by a whopping 10 seconds and extended his lead.
I remember Todd Borden having a huge moment there in his Evo 6-1.
To create the world's fastest shopping trolley and slips sliding away. Borden on the edge.
Time crushing an intercooler pipe and there's a big tree on the outside, and if there's any rain it sort of develops a puddle, and there's lots of things going on. So it's one of those spots, if you haven't been there, you will have seen it on TV. If I'm really clever, there will be a nice little video clip of it, or maybe a photo, one of Jeff Ritter's really good photos, in amongst this as we edit it, but no promises. And if you're listening to it on audio, well, tough. But it's a really, really cool spot. I mean, it's a tricky event to spectate this year because with 148 entries, you're near 3 hours watching the field, and it's quality right the way through. You start with those four-wheel drive classic cars and run through them, then the classic two-wheel drives, slowest to fastest, and of course, as well as all our NZRC superstars, you've got the Passy Hagstroms, Mads Osbergs, Chris Meeks coming across to contest that event too, so they're well worth watching. And then we get into the APRC and the NZRC fields and right through the Clubman's, the Mainland Series. There's so much to see that you really don't want to be trying to race away halfway through a stage because the action is just that good.
Absolutely. So look, if we go to Special Stage 4, next best bet to carry on from there, you've got a couple of options, right? So either Special Stage 6, which the Waitahuna Gully Road, or you can go to Special Stage 7, Lee Flat Road junction with Black Rock Settlement Road. Now, I'm pretty sure I've been to that one before. Talk us through the different options that you've got there if you follow our little plan for you.
Yeah. Stage 6 gives you the opportunity to probably get back in for a bit of the street stage as well, which again is another one of those iconic stages, always part of the Otago rally and very, very popular. It's amazing how many people turn up every year and line, Ward Street and all of those, round the back there, and like there's always action. There's always someone whose day was going so well until they get to that stage and it ends up going badly. Otherwise, you can go to Special Stage 7, Spectator Junction in there. Last year we saw one of the Filipino drivers end up having a big role there. I remember Mike Young coming in the other direction with just massive commitment down the hill. Huge big slide. I think Chris Ramsey did a very similar thing.
Chris Ramsey had plenty of time to make up after his Stage 1 disaster. And here, well, he just pushed it a little too far.
Probably going on 30 years ago. Again, one of those ones that I remember watching as a kid growing up, and it's really, really cool to get to those places. So a couple of really good options to spectate there. Both of them pretty easy to get to, relatively easy to access off state highways. So if you're looking for maps, otagorally.com, and the spectator section, they've got really, really good maps to get you into these places.
And look, if you're in the Dunedin region and you're probably not able to get out and you've got other things on or whatever during the day, that street stage that you talk about, great place to see cars up close, at a pretty cool environment. You're going to talk to the drivers and whatnot afterwards as well. And as you say, BB, there seems to always be a little bit of drama at that stage. Doesn't look like it's, it doesn't sound like it's a big test when you consider what they've been doing during the day. But you get back there, it's the end of the day, everyone's a little bit fatigued, always a little sting in the tail, at that street circuit. Let's get into day 2. So you're telling us Special Stage 9, a couple of different spectating options there. Henley Road Junction with either Christie's Gully Road, or you can go to the Aotearoa Kuri Bush Road. Great spectating spots, really handy. We know these ones pretty well. Easy to get to off State Highway 1. Yeah,
literally 2 minutes off State Highway 1. I think the big thing with these is getting in early for any stages, because there's going to be huge crowds. This one's early in the morning, so you do have to be a bit committed. Your first car's 10 to 8, so get up, get on the road early and get to either one of those junctions. They're right by the highway and they are good viewing.
And then you're suggesting cross the highway, go to the other side, the western side of State Highway 1 for special stage 11. This is Waihola Road, intersection with South Boundary Road. Starts about 9:10, so you can have a crack at maybe half each of those early stage in that one, yeah?
Yeah, correct. Or if you do want a little bit of a sleeper, that's a pretty good spot to get to. Quite a cool junction again, one that we see used most years in some configuration. Quite often in the Berwick Forest. This year it runs just around the perimeter of the forest on the good county roads there. So tricky little junction. The other direction last year it caught Kyle Percival out, and it's made life interesting for people many a time. But it's quite incredible the speed that the competitors can carry too, and as they blast towards you up the hill, just how late they can leave the braking and throw the cars in. It's a pretty neat place to have a spectate.
Whichever way you go with those early two stages, special stage 13, I think everyone should be able to get to that junction of Adams Flat and Fellaburn Road. That one getting underway at midday, so nice and easy to get to that.
Yeah, it's nice and easy. You may look at getting away a little bit early because I think the big one is getting into Currybush and getting in there early. There's going to be huge amounts of people there. Getting into, by our old mate Darren's corner there, Joe's corner, going in the other direction and then down past the junctions. So that's always a pretty cool spot to watch the cars. You can see them coming all the way down from the water tank corner, or you can go to the water tank corner itself, which is the junction of Christie's Gully and Otago Currybush East Road, and a couple of great spots to watch rally cars. I mean, Currybush is something pretty special.
One that I always enjoy, if you perhaps got your own theory on where to go and view throughout the day, getting to the end of Currybush. I mean, you can kind of see the cars from a distance, approach the last couple of corners, and then it's like, I've spent a fair bit of time doing end of stage interviews, and there is no better place in New Zealand rallying to interview drivers than at the end of Currybush. Every single one of them, they're either white and pale faced because they've had a massive moment in there, or they're beaming and on top of the world, adrenaline's pumping because it's just been a ride of their lives. Like it is the iconic stage probably in New Zealand rallying these days, and like I say, if you just like sporting theatre, I don't think you'll find a better end of stage to go to in the country than Currybush. And you can get off to the finish and still probably see everyone spray some champagne if you only see the top handful of cars, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So down to the Brighton Domain for the finish. It's another opportunity to see the stars and meet the people, and that's one of the great things with our sport too, is it's so accessible. Things like that start ceremony on Friday night in the Octagon, the finish ceremony on Sunday afternoon at Brighton Domain, the service parks, out at Lawrence on Saturday and Waihola on Sunday. Fantastic way. If you've got a hero in there, unfortunately Dale Budge isn't going to be there this year, so you might have to wait for his autograph. But to meet the real rock stars of the Brian Green Property Group New Zealand Rally Championship, they're a fantastic way to do it too, and quite a spectacle. What some of those teams can achieve in a short period of time, Budgie, is quite impressive.
Oh, absolutely. We talk about being a team sport. I mean, watching a service, particularly when someone's come in, they're under the pump. There's a bit of drama with the car, and you can see some of these heroes that go about their work without any fanfare. We always talk about the drivers and maybe occasionally the co-driver, but what the teams put themselves through, and it's pretty cool to watch. So look, you touched on it. That Friday night, in the Octagon, always a great spot to go and see the cars up close. You get an autograph, have a chat to the drivers, get to see all the stars in one place. We've got some huge superstars from world rallying in attendance again this year, and I have to say, BB, you're right. I'm already starting to get a little bit envious. Obviously, other commitments, unfortunately, keep me out of Otago this year, but I'm already getting a little bit jealous that you're jumping on a plane in a week or so and going down there and going to have a good weekend. I'll follow it. I'll be watching the live stream myself, maybe on mute.
I suspect I'll be fairly heavily critiqued, is probably the concern.
Look, it's an awesome event. Like the organising committee that put on this event have set a standard for a long, long time, and Gets bigger and better every year. So I hope everyone that is going down enjoys it. If you can't get there, obviously follow on our social channels and the Facebook page, and we'll have the post-production show for you as per as well.
Yep, but we'll be back next week too to run a ruler over the entry list, and there's quite a few names to run through on that one, quite a few class battles that are going to be really interesting. So join us next week, but in the meantime, thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next week.
See you then.